Welcome to Conversations with Garmamie. This is episode number 32. Our guest is Puro Okelo Obob. He's a kickboxer, martial arts instructor, and combat sports promoter in East Africa with affiliations to the World Kickboxing Federation. He's been involved in the development of kickboxing and other martial arts styles in East Africa since 1997, starting off in Ethiopia, as well as neighboring Kenya, Uganda, and most recently South Sudan, as that country's kickboxing team's head coach. Puro speaks to us about his lifelong commitment and journey in martial arts and how martial arts are a great tool for youth and social development.
You become disciplined enough to the point where you take everything so lightly and you take everything not for granted, but you appreciate things. And that's what martial art has done to me. It gave me that momentum of being who I am, and what I need to be.
Tell us, when you came to Ottawa, right? Where did you train? Where's the first dojo you trained at? Who was your sensei or instructor? And yeah.
Well, first when I came, I was exploring around and see who does what. And my background was in karate. Actually, I went to Takahashi for a few days and few times. And by then there was Japan Karate Associations. And it wasn't that much to do. And I saw, the gym wasn't the way I wanted to do things. And then I went directly to Terry and Jiu-Jitsu and Kickbox, because this was the group where I am familiar with. Like, I'm familiar with full contact, and and this is people that I loved. And when I went to Toronto, I don't know if you remember, there was a movie, Search and Destroy, because wherever I go, I always search for who is who doing what. And when I was in Toronto at Ryerson, I joined John Pak-Soo, because there was a movie about him I watched in Africa, Search and Destroy. It was a guy left in Vietnam struggling to come back in the United States and hunt people who left him behind.
Wow.
And John Pak-Soo was the actor in that movie. And I was searching for him, and also went there and joined him. And I trained with him seriously, and took some tournament in, it was then light full contact. It wasn't that full contact, but this is how I trained and where I went and trained. And then made it back to Ottawa again and joined the group Jean-Yves Terry and continue with my full contact training.
This is Jean-Yves Thériault, the Iceman, yeah?
The Iceman, yeah.
Now,
It's Terrian Jiu-Jitsu and Kickbox, actually they call it Terrian Jiu-Jitsu and Kickbox. But then it was on Sun Ant and Montreal Road, so it wasn't where they are today on 1800 Bank or Riverside. It was on Sun Ant, Montreal Road back then.
Can you tell us a little bit about Jean-Yves and his legacy or role in kickboxing in Canada and internationally as a competitor? Give us a little bit on.
Well, Jean-Yves has been in the sport since 70s, like back in 77, 78. This is a man who's a pioneer in kickbox. And all this work goes back to Terrian, John Terrian, who really managed to sponsor and support and promote Jean-Yves. I think Jean-Yves' name speaks to it by itself. He's one of the men that I met over the years, a very gentle man. And you meet him on the street, you'll never think he's a kickboxer or a tough fighter. You'll even want to push him over and say, hey, come on, move out of my way. But talking about him, he's a great role model. I really accept him and respect him for what he does and how he carry on with his name. And I believe if I follow his footsteps, I would love to be like him. I cannot be like him, but I would love to be one of his example, and maybe to spread and become more humble wherever I go. Yes.
Now, speaking of humility, what role does humility have in combat sports and martial arts, in your opinion?
Well, it is not only when you get defeated, but when you lose some trails, when you really, when you think you almost accomplished something, but then you find yourself in a zero ground. And when you want to really keep on moving, but then there's no way out. It's a way I can't really think of it. But it happened, as a fighters, as people who are in the sport, you can get humiliated no matter what happened, because things happen in life. That's how life goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So what you've competed in these sports, yeah?
Correct.
Tell us about the hardest bout you've ever had and what you learned from it.
The hardest one was in 1994. I even remember the date and the time. It was on October 14, 1995, in Chicago, Illinois. They call it U.S. Shodokan Open. It was a bare knuckle full contact karate. Mm-hmm. It's a kickbox. It's a karate, and partly takedown. And I guess I trained for takedown only for about a month. With Brian, he's the one who gave me the gi, or the jiu-jitsu gi, which was torn apart when I was at that tournament. Yeah, that was the toughest competition I ever really.
Were you guys wearing gloves or?
Well, you have to fight 6 guys at the same weight class. The first 2 rounds, no gloves, is bare knuckle full contact.
Oh, bare knuckle.
That's the name of it.
Right.
And then if you pass the 2 rounds, then now you have 6 ounce, which is the MMA gloves. Mm-hmm. The 6 ounce one was an open fingers, mm-hmm. And we can strike anywhere, and that's what I love about it, because it's a full contact. There's knee, there's elbow, there's everything. There's takedown, but it has to be 10 to 15 second takedown, and there's no submissions.
When you say it's 10 to 15 seconds, and was that groundwork?
Groundwork, yes.
Okay. Can you strike on the floor?
You can strike on the floor. You can do anything.
So lead us through one of these bouts. How did it go?
Well, it was because it was all fighters from all over the world, mm-hmm. and you never know who you're fighting and what the style are they and are they good at. So you have to keep on figuring out how your opponent will move, or what to do next and your next move, and that was one of the challenging things. And again, some of them have background in kickboxing, boxing. Some were judoka. You never know who what the fighters are, and there's no profile you want to go through and read it. It's the only thing you do is meet the gentleman in the ring, but he's in your kilo, and you just have to do your thing.
So there's no research in advance. There's no studying, blah blah blah.
There's no video. There's no video about your fighter. It's just old school. It's a full contact fight. School. Yes, come in, weighing, and that's your weight. 70 kilos, 160 something pound, and here you go.
How did you hear about the event? Was this through Jean-Yves?
No, I was with Jean-Yves by then, but that was the first time I took my professional kickboxing license from Atlantic Canada. And I was looking for tournaments, and that was one of my greatest tests ever.
Greatest?
The greatest test in my kickboxing or full contact career.
Interesting.
Yes.
What, were you thrown during the bout?
Yes, I was taken down, absolutely, yes. But like I said, I only trained for a month.
In takedowns.
In takedowns, and I loved was Brian, one of the best guy was a Tyrian group. And my uniform was completely torn apart, but again, it was one of my beautiful time to learn different techniques.
Within the struggle of competition, right?
Exactly.
Now, what throws and were you guys practicing for? You said you were practicing for a month. What throws and takedowns were you guys working on?
We were mostly, submissions. I thought there would be some submissions, but there wasn't any. Like locks, it had to be some locks and chokes. Wasn't any. But the best thing was just to defend. Again, is when you're on ground and you're coming back up.
But as far as takedowns and throws and suplex or what have you, what were you guys? Do you remember the techniques you were working?
Well, I was working a lot on my back, being if something happened when you're on your back or when you're down and escape. Mostly the escapes and how.
And stalling for time.
Exactly, and how to get up and get ready for the next move. Yeah.
I guess from, so this was back in 94, right?
This is in 94, 95, yes.
Were you following the early days? At the time, UFC was around.
It wasn't UFC by then. It was an octagon.
Right.
It was octagon coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you at the time ever think, hey, I wanna try out Ultimate Fighting and what they used to call NHB, no hold barred.
No hold barred,
Mm-hmm.
or octagon. The pride. It is true. I was even thinking to go for one of those elimination fights,
Mm-hmm.
but then my mind came to different senses because when I looked at some tournaments, the rules wasn't imposed that much, and even though
there are no rules back in the day. Right?
Exactly, there were no rules, and you can grab the gentleman from any side of the lock as far you knock him out, and knock him out cold. And for me, as a sportsman, I look into what makes us a sportsman or a sport ladies, sportsmanship, and I looked into the rules, and I don't want to damage anybody or damage myself. I want to keep going and train, and any means, if there are good rules, I will go into one of those tournaments. I love tournaments. I love competition. I just don't know why. But the rules has to be imposed, and back in the days it was very difficult.
It sure was. I mean, the sport. Oh, he's getting a phone call. We're gonna take a quick pause here.
Yeah, it could be from Africa too. It could be from Africa. You never know.
Mind if we record? Or?
Oh yeah, just
sure?
let me see. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see who it is.
No, it's not from Africa. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just have to now give me a chance to put it off and.
It was probably Dana White calling, just letting you know that the sport has evolved. It's no longer no holds barred, NHB. It's mixed martial arts, plenty of rules, unified rules, and safety is always an important part of the sport. The sport has evolved. Mixed martial arts, combat fighting has evolved. If you were, say, 20 years younger, and I'm not saying that you're old now, but if you were 20 years younger, would you compete in mixed martial arts? With all the current rules?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, I will not only give it a shot. I will. The good thing now, you don't have to fight 4 to 5 guys. You can just fight one person and win that title and win that fight. Hey, I'm made for that. I love a competition, like I said. I think I will give it a try. Yes, I will really jump into just one of the fight and see how it goes.
So now, Puro, when did you decide? Because a lot of people, I guess. You've been going to Ethiopia and East Africa, generally speaking, the Horn of Africa, etc., for quite some time, going back and forth, developing the sports there as far as teaching people kickboxing and sharing your knowledge and skill. What motivated you originally to do that, and when did you decide to go back?
When I talk of sports, I love to see myself as a role model. And when I was growing up doing my karate back then, I did not have a role model. I was following, as I guess everybody did, following Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, Jimmy Wang Yu. I don't even hear those names anymore, but those are the guys back then when karate movie comes up. We always wanted to jump on, and I want to jump off my seat and say, hey, I want to hit like Bruce Lee. I want to jump and do somersault like Bruce Lee. Yes, it is true. When I came here and I really learned, there was always things in my mind. What do I need? What is next for me? And how can I really not only involve, but change where I came from? And one of the things is what I thought was sport. It's the greatest way. I studied technical engineer. I did management, but I can be seated somewhere, and I don't see myself seated in one of the small corner office, really designing and reading about technical or troubleshooting things. I thought of just going back to Africa and really do something. Not only do something, but really be part of the growing generation. African kids, when you look at them, even today, vision of being kids are not there. Vision of them having right directions are not there. And this is what I thought of maybe I could play a little role of giving them sense of belonging and having them as just young people where they can really have good directions. Rather
Through
than
sports.
Through sports, of
Right.
course, and through martial arts, because it's the easiest way. Everybody will love, like, hey, oh, that guy does judo, does karate. Everybody will love to hear that name. And kickboxing wasn't a big name in Ethiopia. People knows judo because back during Mengistu, the military, like the special paratroopers and all those guys were like judokas, and like judo was a bigger thing, and then karate was a big name. So thought of doing that and go back and just use a sport as a main vessel for getting young people having more focus and really have directions and maybe go for competitions.
So you left the comforts of a career, I guess, in some corner office or what have you, corner office, cubicle, whatever, to pursue and to pursue your passion. Is that fair to say? And that was to share the value of martial arts, but mainly focusing on youth and development through sport in East Africa. What did people at the time think about, I'm talking about friends, family, fellow martial artists in North America, what did they think about you going and doing that sort of stuff? Did people, I guess, let's start with the non-martial artists, family and friends. What did they think? Did they think, oh, you've lost your mind, Puro, why would you do that?
Well, it is true. People expect too much from anyone. When I say too much, it's like, you're a family man, you're the bigger one in the family, and everybody just look at you, which I did. Like, I managed to sponsor my family, sponsor my brothers and sisters, brought them here. But that wasn't enough. I just don't want to focus on my own family and be, what is it? What is it? Just mean me alone. And it's not in my head definition. I just want to see what a brighter venue I can really open. A nice path for the younger people, a nice path for the Africans, like people who follow their dreams. Of course, they think I was crazy. Living life in Canada, why do you want to come back to Ethiopia, for instance, when I opened my first academy in 97? And it's like, you coming to open an academy of martial arts here? Why not, open let's say a grain supplier, or you're becoming a supplier for one of the companies? And yes, it is true, I can make $multi-million supplying Ethiopia with grain. But what next? There are a lot of people who want to do that. But there's none who want to open a gymnasium. And that was a big challenge by itself. So it's like you investing in a desert, not knowing where the next water is coming from, or the next truck is coming to the city. And that's what it was. It was a big challenge to myself. I guess, to put it in short, going back to Africa, it gave me the strength of doing things. It made me more stronger. It is true, I lost a lot of friends in between, but also I made 155 friends from 155 countries. Now, I am a member of World Kickboxing Federation. I am a body within World Kickboxing Federation. I have a greater say in terms of kickboxing now. I lost almost everything I have in Canada, yes, including my family, yes, but I also gained more humanity in my heart, and I become more focused more than ever.
Wow.
And
Elaborate on when you say you've lost everything. What do you mean by that?
While you was asking me if what people thought of me when I went back to Africa, one of it is like, while I got married, I brought a wife here too, and in between me going back and forth, working back in Africa, I lost her. That's what I mean by losing everything. Having almost nothing in your bank account, you lose all your credit cards, that's a loss.
Right.
But out of all that, I gain more. I gain more, not only the knowledge, but I gain more being human, accepting my failures and accepting my gain. And, you have not only the strength, but you have more power of doing things positively. And that's what I gain. And I guess now I'm shifting that. I'm shifting it to the better. Rather than, going crying over it, I'm shifting it to the greater and making other people really laugh and, enjoying and joy and giving them opportunity to go for tournaments which they never had before and just being there. Yes.
Would you say, going back to what you had mentioned before, the struggle kind of just evolves, it manifests itself in the struggle is always there.
It is true. That's a struggle in life. But again, the more you struggle, the better.
Right.
Because without the struggling, without having the struggle, you can't go nowhere. It doesn't give no sense being just waking up in the morning and really, like people here will open the tap, water tap, and say, oh yeah, I have my water. They don't even know they have water. But I've been into different areas where there's no tap water. You have to bring your own bucket and fill it up, go wash your hand with your glass, if you have a glass, or, if that water is treated or not. And that's what I call a struggle. But, and it make you more better human being, because now you want to think of tomorrow. And not taking everything for granted, but you want to think of what is next and how I'm going to do it better. And that's what the struggle is all about.
How do you teach, I guess, when you go abroad to certain countries that are underdeveloped, and you go to develop its amateur kickboxing and sports scene, how do you operate? How do you run a class when you're lacking equipment, for example? Tell us about that. Because I've seen video clips online from international news agencies. You've been reported on. They've done certain profiles on you. I think it was CCTV and another international news media agency, and it's remarkable seeing these athletes training in conditions that I think for people who come from more developed countries might not be able to understand how one can train. I'm generalizing here about how one can train in such conditions. Speak to us as to how you would run class with a lack of equipment and so on.
Well, it's great you mention it. It is one of the things been in my mind day one, because that's how I started. When I talked of struggling coming to North America, and when I talked earlier about, getting out of under deep water and coming take a breath at the top, that's how I started my karate back then. I started from nothing. We were just open grass, open sand, and with our uniform. We don't even have the right uniform, barefoot. And this is what I love martial art, because you don't need fancy equipment, really to do something. You can be half naked and you do your grappling, As you're familiar, Africans are very good in wrestling, and they love wrestling as a way of competition. Talking about training centers, what you only need is an open ground. You keep it clean, make sure there's no metals or anything, sharp to hurt a participant or a player. And that's it. If you have a water for them to drink, that's it. And you don't need fancy shower. I don't even have, in some areas now. In Ethiopia, we may have some good gyms and everything, but in South Sudan, where you saw the footage, there's no running water. So we bring our own drums and I treat the water, put it in, and guys drink. At the end, they just half wash, to take the sweat off. They go home and take the shower. Sometimes they go to the river. And that's what it is. And building it from zero, that's what I love about it. And going there, being part of that, that's what I love the most. And I'm trying, what I'm trying to do is really shifting it from where it was back then. In my days, where I did not have a punching bag, I did not have a pad, we were using one another to hit and kick.
Wow.
But now I bring those punching bags, I bring gloves, I bring safety equipment with me, like what we did on fundraising lately. Or some people, some company will donate like top 10. They donated about 6 hand gloves right now. I'm going to meet the martial artists maybe on Tuesday, and they may be donating some equipment. So these are the things I carry with me. I make sure there is change, right? And I develop the athletes to where I need them to be. I also give them the chance of them being leaders of that community, because tomorrow they will be the coaches. I give them that chance, and this is what I do. I involve things and I get them to do it better.
Give us a kind of an overview of some of your athletes in Juba in South Sudan, and tell us as far as profile of them as athletes. What are their strengths as kickboxers specifically, and what do they need as you're their coach? What do you see the greater need in terms of their skills development? Is it the cardio? Is it the being more technical with the striking? Kind of give us an overview so people can understand the level of competition or potential of competitors coming out of South Sudan. Will we see a South Sudanese kickboxer in some high-level competition in Japan or even Europe or North America? Give us an idea of these athletes. Their strengths?
Well, the first thing I'll talk about is as I talked about, having younger ones who have no directions. People grow up in a different areas, different profile of life. A place like South Sudan, there's always complex, and they've been in a war. Maybe some of these young kids grown up during the war, and they have sense of toughness and being ruthless, and being having no self-respect. And what I do first as a coach is make sure I lead them to the right directions, and make sure I give them the right coaching and what they need to be as a right athletes. Coming back to the strength and the way the South Sudanese are made. South Sudanese are really built in a different, I will not say different from anybody else, but I would say they have the ability of becoming champions. Just because the way they are grown up and their climate, it has always been a competition in their life. So that is the only thing I'm working on now, is to put them in technicality and give them the mental work. They have psychological part of being the martial artist, not the toughest guy on the block, but being the martial artist. So being gentle, in the meantime being a good competitor and have good technical ability to train and to become also, not only in cardio, but in condition and mental ability. That's my job as a coach. And again, going back to, the way South Sudanese are, they're very competitive, yes. Like I talked earlier about wrestling, and they love wrestling. They have wrestling background.
There's a traditional style of wrestling, yeah?
Traditional style of wrestling.
What is it called again?
Well, everybody has a name for it,
right.
and their own language. You go back to the Nubians have their own names, and the Dinkas had a name for themselves, the Mundaris, the Latukas, the Anuak, and every tribe has a name for wrestling. But it become like a national, not only national sport, but it's almost every tribe has its own way of crowning their own champion.
What do you see as the common factor for developing these sports in South Sudan as well as Ethiopia and Kenya? What's lacking, and what's common amongst all these athletes?
There's one common thing, and not athlete actually. I'll just take the conditions of the countries itself, because when like we said, generalizing East Africa, it is always good to have. Let's say in Ethiopia or Kenya, there is more acceptance in Kenya, less acceptance in Ethiopia, less acceptance in Southern Sudan, because the priority is not sport. It is about government running their own, institutions and the way they are. But also finding sponsors is the toughest problems in developing sport back there. Having people to generate money to sports or to channel money to sports is not a big deal, not only for the government but for corporate companies, those who run different institution back in maybe in Ethiopia or Southern Sudan. In Kenya, it's okay. It's a country where it's almost sport is really growing, but they don't have enough promoters to put bigger shows, which we did like an African Continental in 2014, which went very well. But it's lacking, having all that coordinations. It is true. The common thing among the younger people is they accept sport. They really want to be like anyone else. They want to be superstars, and they want to be known, and they want to represent their countries. But the opportunity to take them to those arenas are not there. And when I say the opportunity is like, if I want to take somebody for world championship, they have to be a backing, someone with financial backing, or maybe a good sponsor, or Ethiopian airline jumping into the thing and say, okay, I want to sponsor this team, or any other airline in this matter. That's the common problems back there. Having government prioritize the sports, it's not a big deal for them. So these other things are really not only me, but everybody's facing, mostly in African countries. Even I believe you saw some in World Cup. When some other countries wanted to, like I said, we don't put the names, but some countries were almost going to the finals or the quarterfinals or the semifinals, and the money were not there. So the next day, the airplane has to take the money physically from one of the countries to go dropped in Brazil. So this is a problem in Africa. It's becoming a common problem just because they don't have the right people in the right positions, and corruption is really.
You mean in the sporting bodies?
In the sporting body, or even the government itself, or the way the governments run their institutions, and I believe I would like to see a change in that. I'd like to see government putting priority to young people, because through these young people, the country will grow. And it's very simple for young people to identify themselves in the sport rather than in military. And that's what I see.
So you're seeing sports development in these countries as a potential for economic and social development as a whole, right?
As a whole thing, actually, not only economic and social development, even politically, they bring good political stabilities. Because most of the countries where I came from, they're using young people as military or to fight for their cause. Imagine if these young people become occupied. Some of them want to be a champion in Olympic, and you open more stadiums and more gymnasiums all over. They will never want to go to a war. Why would they want to risk their life if they can, get a bigger name and go make money somewhere else? Why they want to go and raid another village if he can make $1 million, from track and field, whether they can, run for 42K.
Right.
And make 150,000 for one of Diamond League, rather than going and work for 7 days, go rob or raid a cattle camp. And this could be diverse as political stability for the country.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, recently here in Ottawa, you had a kickathon, right, to promote to raise funds for the work that you've been doing in terms of developing these sports and so on. Tell us about this event, where it was held, how it went, who participated, and give us an overview of that, the summary.
Well, we did a kickathon, and this is again we are running a small charity group we call One Try for South Sudan, because the complex in South Sudan, or the uprising, it's always start with tribalism, and in my area where I teach in South Sudan, I have a center for young people to overcome these tribalism differences. I bring them as one team, one country, one nation, one people. And we decided to have the tribal, one tribe for South Sudan. And this is just a nice way of fundraising, and also not to bring the name itself, but to really generate more income, create more awareness about what is South Sudan and what's going on there. And also to challenge my trip back to Africa. We did it at N1 Academy, the Thai Boxing Academy. This is in 401 Crescent Street. And Thai Boxing Academy, they've been like the forerunner, since I've been coming back to Ottawa. Especially 2014, they also helped. They did a bigger tournament here. It was a clinch one, and they raised good amount of money to help supporting some of my equipment back with me to, again, Africa. And this time around, they did the same thing. It was 1,000, kickathon for South Sudan, and have people who came from different gyms. Some people didn't even do kickboxing, but they just, want to be part of this nice event. And again, it's all about giving to the community and giving to humanity. We have, I believe, someone from Honda, Dow Honda, and they run also the Mercedes company here. They came, they did their kick, 1,000 kicks. Some went home with a blizzard. I got a gray legs, gray feet. We said the black man doesn't change color, but we did doing those 1,000 kicks. Anyway, but it was so interesting and it was so great. I have a lot of people who participated. And nice, it was a nice team, nice, great things, and it was so promising.
The work you've been doing was featured on CCTV. That's a Chinese broadcasting in their team in Africa, in East Africa and Sudan, as well as Al Jazeera Africa as well. They feature that, as well as CBC. Recently, CBC Ottawa did a piece promoting the Kickathon. Tell us about that and what all this means. I mean, you're getting exposure for something you've been doing for over, 15 years now, about?
Over 15 years, since 97, actually. It is true. I love the way CBC took the story, and I love the way Omar did it. It gave a window of opportunity to a Canadian, point of view, because they don't. I don't think Canadian would have known they have a Canadian who's striving and working hard in Africa who want to make a difference there. And CBC has done that, and I believe not everybody saw it, but some people managed to see it, and that's why they're sort of responsive to the cause. And some are still asking where I am, and like I saw some internet connection lately. Some people wanted to know what I'm doing and how they can get involved, and all of that. So it was a great window of opportunity, yes, in Canada. It is true, like you mentioned, Al Jazeera, CBC, CCTV, China, Africa. And also I did some interview with Radio France International. The Dutch has taken it, The Guardians, New York Times. And now PBS actually is interested to do some documentary in South Sudan.
Wow.
Yes. So things are maybe falling apart. Falling together now,
right.
Coming together. Sorry, not falling apart, but coming together. And I believe, everybody has to sacrifice to get somewhere. And this is just, like you said, a few years of doing the same thing, and it now is almost coming together, and maybe people are noticing what I'm doing in Africa, and I hope, for better. I would like to see some more involvement, and I would like to see not only having like Al Jazeera or China television, but having Canadian televisions and the different networking, and maybe the different NGOs in Canada, and not to come to South Sudan, but at least to see who is doing what. In terms of human ability, and maybe put some resources there to help younger people in Africa, because Africa is not the Africa of yesterday; it is Africa of today, and They just needed, to be like anyone else, being in Olympic, being in the World Games, and they just want to have peace. And this is why I'm back there and make sure peace is number one priority to younger people, rather than having themselves distractions or killing or becoming a child soldiers. Yeah.
Well, Puro, it's great to see that this journey, this struggle. Now you're getting quite the exposure. Obviously, you've worked hard towards developing all these athletes and spreading the sports in East Africa, and the media is obviously recognizing that now. And who knows, there might be a documentary, as you mentioned. I know you're also working with Sandy Pembroke, hashtag Always Be Giving, ABG, with the World Tour. They're supporting you here. There's also support from MuayThai in Ottawa. Just Google MuayThai. You'll find their website. What's their website again? I'll put it in the. I'll put it in the. So if you're in Ottawa and you want to train kickboxing, Thai boxing, so on and so forth, make sure you check out that dojo. Any last words? Any last message you want to share to your listeners?
Oh, well, yes. What I would love to say, is, it is true. It's been a great journey, which I love. It started with John Eve and him coming to Africa in 2005. He came to tour East Africa. It was just Kenya and Ethiopia, and I wish he can come back again and really bring his team and tour Africa. This time around, I'm just not talking about East Africa. I'm talking about the whole continent of Africa. There are about 22 countries now members of World Kickboxing Federations, and Egypt is jumping in one of the line to host the next African Challenge. And also they want to do an African world title, where after the World Cup, there is a WKF, like the World Kickboxing Federation World Championship, coming up in Italy, 2016. And I would love to see not only South Sudan, but the whole continent of Africa bringing good teams, strong teams, and taking part in that. And this has been a great journey. And not only that, it's the development of sports is one of the best bridge. Is a bridge to bring young people together, bring mostly people who are never even knew they can become a world champion. On my return to South Sudan, now I'm going to host the Continental Championship. There is a belt already. I'm carrying it. It's here.
Wow.
Yeah, it is here in Canada, and one of the African fighter become a Continental champ. And,
wow.
And this is a greater things, and building toward having a great future in sports. Like I said, sport is the best venue. It unites, it brings, it has no barriers. It brings young girls and boys together. And I'd love to see Canada playing a greater role. Like they are ambassadors for United Nations, but I want them to be ambassadors for the sports. And this is one of the great things. I would love to see this country involved.
Thank you very much for your time. All the best in your journey, sir.
Thank you, Garmamie. And you've been following the story, and you've been part of the story. And I believe you're doing so great. And I hope I'd like to see you as a director one day for one of African championship as well.
Wow, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Garmamie. For more information, visit garmamie.com. That's GARMAMIE.com.